Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. And don't forget to subscribe to Candid Frank Stanisci 1030 on your YouTube channel. Now, on CFL Talk, as usual, David Morassutti, and we watched a team that has been very good over the past couple of years, 3 to be exact. They've had moments where they have not looked so great, and I think everything went wrong for them right up to the injury, uh, you know, situation that they also were introduced to. Aside, I don't think there was a single. Nope, I don't think either of the three phases played a great game.
No, and it was a deserved loss. When I talked to head coach Ryan Dinwiddie after the game, he said they just felt like the team that didn't have any energy going into that game. Warm up, they felt sluggish, and obviously losing Chad Kelly took, I think, some of the energy out of the group too. When you lose your starting quarterback, that's a tough blow anytime. But you know what? He was very critical of himself. He said play calling wasn't at his best. He got out coached in that one. And he also said that there were very uncharacteristic mistakes made by his players, and he called out, actually the one he called out the most was his receivers, saying he felt they could have helped out Cameron Dukes a little bit more. Cameron Dukes took a lot of, I wouldn't say blame for that loss, but he took, he was, some people weren't too thrilled with his play. Like, he was a backup thrown into a situation that he wasn't expecting to be thrown into, and like, I kind of agree with Dinwiddie. I thought the receivers didn't exactly help him in a lot of ways. Sure, the play calling wasn't really suited to somebody who was coming as a backup, which I get, but it was just all around. Just, it was one of those efforts that I think the Argos will take right now rather than when it matters the most.
So they're 0-1 this week.
They're 0-1
And
this week. They got to
they're
get
0
back
and
to
1.
being 0-0.
Now they're 0-0. They'll go for another game. From my perspective, what I saw, I saw a team that made up for all the mistakes they didn't make since the beginning of the year. They looked rather human. As far as the quarterbacking is concerned, I don't know how you bring somebody in an injury situation, no experience, very little at very least, as a quarterback in the Canadian Football League, and to have them, blow the lights out is a little high expectation. Um, did Cameron Dukes look good in exhibition season? Yes, he did. He looked pretty good. He made some really great plays, but he went out there knowing what he was going to do. He went out there with a plan that was basically put together for him. The plan that was deployed with him in there wasn't the one that they went in together. The coach, or the quarterback calling, and the quarterback himself were on the same page. They were getting on the page during the game.
Yeah,
So
and look, I remember watching him in Guelph. There were good moments, but there were also some not so great moments. And I just think everyone needs to realize that the backup quarterback gets most of his playing time in the preseason. He doesn't see a lot of reps during practice, and so the big question mark here will be: will Chad Kelly play? The good indication of that will be to see who's the first quarterback out for practice. They didn't practice Monday because they're flying back. They came in late Saturday morning, like pretty much Saturday morning. So they had Sunday off. I expect them, and today was a holiday. I don't know if that had anything to play with it, but I think tomorrow should expect. We're talking Monday evening, Tuesday. Should expect the Argos to be back
you still
practicing.
might not see Kelly on Tuesday.
And you know what? That might be fair. If he's still dealing with something, they're not gonna force it. And like Dinwiddie likely won't name a starter for the game just yet. He'll see how Kelly is after a few days, because the thing is they have the benefit of a 9-day break between games, right? So he doesn't have to make that determination right away. They might not even practice right away. They might give guys, there were a lot of injuries in this game, especially on defense. They
And
lost
they had a
Darius.
few going in too.
Yes, Darius Pickett got hurt during the game. I was reminded that it wasn't. I tweeted out it was Costigan that got hurt, but it was actually Brinkman because Costigan was already hurt going into the game. The Argos are banged up. They are banged up, especially on the defensive line. Quite a few guys are down. Obviously, linebacker they're down. Enoch Mwamba, Jordan Williams just came back. So yeah, this is a banged up team. Jamal Peters also wasn't playing in this game too. So like this is a banged up defense right now, and I thought the defense still played pretty well. And if you watch during the game too, Coach Bell, Josh Bell, the defensive backs coach, one of the assistant coaches, he like I don't know if you saw the look in his eyes. I wouldn't have wanted to be on those sidelines if I was an Argo player because he was just giving it to them.
Look, it's one of those things. You know, you can go 18-0, but it's pretty hard to do. Can this team hit a skid right now and maybe lose a couple of games? And if they did, is that a trigger for panic mode? I don't think so. I don't think this team will panic either. I don't think the organization will panic. But from the positive side, Calgary looked more like the Calgary we've been accustomed to the last decade.
Yeah, I think that was a perfect game plan, perfect execution. The best thing about that game was clean football. They didn't make mistakes. They made some mistakes, but the offense didn't make a single mistake because they played a game that suited what they needed it to be like, which was we're not going to hand the game to that Argos defense. They played that game as if to say, we're not going to let the Argos defense be the playmakers, right? That they're used to being. A lot of screen passes, running the ball. Like that's the best way to neutralize a really good defense is if you can run the ball against them. And that's what Calgary did the last time Toronto played them in Calgary. They ran the ball almost all game. That wears out the defense, and the defense did not have an answer for it.
No, that's what they did. It was them driving the ball on the ground, and then they noticed that they were having some success, and so they kept pounding the ball using the run game, and the Argos couldn't get they couldn't set themselves up to stop the run game, and once they couldn't stop the run game, then the mayor had an opportunity to basically pass at will, and he was almost perfect, as far as percentage goes. And as you said, the mistakes didn't happen, and they played the kind of football again that we're accustomed to from Calgary, and they were due. They haven't had a very good year. Both these teams, switched personalities in this game. The personalities that they've developed this season, not over a long period, a protracted period. So yeah, Calgary came in here a team struggling. The Toronto Argonauts came in a team on a roll, and well, the only role the Argos were in on this one, role reversal, and Calgary looked great. They really look good. I'm sure the fans and everybody in Calgary is relieved because nobody was looking forward to a 2-6 team in Calgary.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Calgary's never been an easy place to play because everyone talks about why do the East teams struggle to go out west, and why do the West teams sometimes struggle to go east? It's the 3 time zones. You have to get used to that. You have to get used to playing different conditions. The conditions weren't ideal in Calgary too. It was also raining that night as well. So there were some factors that were impacting both, but they were impacting both teams in terms of the weather factor. I'm not going to put the weather on the Argos. The three time zones. I know that some players have had a tough time, and that could have been a reason why the energy wasn't there. I think they flew out on Thursdays when they flew out, or they didn't exactly. It's not easy for teams for CFL teams with the travel. The Argos, had one game where they're out on the East Coast, literally one end of the country, and then they're going to back home and they're going to the other end of the country. Like that's tough. That's a tough challenge to get through. So I think this was a game that maybe some were going to chalk up as a loss. And if you're going to lose one, you're going to lose it now, right? I know people would have liked to have seen the Argos go on a run and be 10-0 or something like that, but you don't get a prize for winning the regular season. You get the prize for winning the Grey Cup in the end.
Well, the Argos have their travel plans are really good because they have the MLSC plane, so they don't hitchhike. So they don't have that issue like some teams might have, where traveling coach could be a lot less fun. They played the kind of game that a team that's going to lose played, and we'll see how they recover this week. We do know that they've got a long wait for the next game. They're going to need a lot of time to sort things out, work on those injuries that they have, and Calgary is in a great place right now, and they did really impress me. David, Meyer is a guy who was mired in a real mojo stomp. He didn't have much of a mojo going, and he got his mojo in this game. We'll see how long that carries on. They need him to be the quarterback they thought he was when they said to Bo Levi Mitchell, you know what, we're going to move on, and we're not re-signing you, so we're going with Meyer. And Bo Levi left, and this was Meyer's team. And good news is he looked pretty good this week. And this is a tough role to take over. When you're the backup and the Hall of Famers there, even if the Hall of Famers on the sideline, right? The pressure is nowhere near as it is when he's gone, because now you're it. There is no other option. While there may be a number two, but there is no number one option other than you, and that's a lot of pressure for Meyer. You come into a team and an organization, and now you're also being asked to work with the coach who's now taken on the GM role. Calgary's a team in transition. Maybe nobody realizes it, but in my opinion, they're in transition emotionally. I mean, they've got a head coach now who's the GM. They got a new quarterback, the guy for the last 10 years that was their franchise face is gone. So, this is not an easy season to be playing, at least early. They've got some emotional things to overcome, I think. And this game may have done it. We may see the second place Calgary Stampeders. And when I say second place, I mean that they won't be the third place team. Like, this could be the team that really gives BC, or, well, it's looking right now like Winnipeg's back to normal. So, they could give BC a run for their money.
I think so. I mean, especially, BC, I mean, they beat Edmonton, and that. So you're having a hard time, debating whether or not Dane Evans is the guy to really help them. And then you see what they do against the Blue Barns, and it makes you realize, okay, this might be an opening for a team like Calgary if they can get everything together. And I think the same could be said for the Rough Riders too, right? I think the West is that 2-3 spot. I can't definitively say, like, what the Lions have going for them right now is they had a really good start. They're still level with BC, but I think the Lions are still level with Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg has the tiebreaker right now because after the division is the division record is one tiebreaker, but also they're 1-1 in this season series against each other now. I'm still leaning towards Saskatchewan as the third team just because I think their defense gives me a little more confidence. If their quarterback plays can remain as good as it was in this past game, they have a chance. But I think Stampeders and Rough Riders are going to be neck and neck here. I think the important thing for Calgary is they got to have a better record at home than 1-3. That's really sunk them right now.
Yeah, that was their first victory at home.
Yeah, which is just kind can't believe I can't believe a Calgary team is 1-3 at home. I wonder how much of that is home field advantage isn't really there for them right now. I think they had 19,000 for the Argo game, which isn't a bad number. I mean, we don't know if that was 19,000 true fans or if that was 19,000 tickets sold, but you wonder, is home field advantage not really a factor right now for Calgary either?
I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. I think they're a team in transition, and they're trying to,
No.
figure out where they're at and gain some confidence in the new structure that the organization has. And structure, we talk in sports about structure all the time, and in this case, in reality, the structure of the organization has changed drastically. When you have a GM move up and then the coach takes over, there's a lot of things that need time to square away. And I think, as I said, yeah, the Calgary's got some work to do, and home field advantage, whatever the reason. I agree with you that you know they're having trouble in the stands like Edmonton is, and like some teams have. But overall, what we're hearing is attendance is up. 5-10%. So that just tells us how bad it was last year going down the home stretch where the attendance wasn't that great. So hopefully things will square away, and this team, the Calgary Stampeders, will be the entertaining team that we've enjoyed watching over the years.
Yeah, I mean the West needs a few more teams to step up right now because we've been seeing it as a two-team race between BC and Winnipeg. But now I wonder, where who like which team is going to come up to be that third player.
We've seen both BC and Winnipeg be human, and we've seen
Oh,
both BC and Winnipeg be superhuman.
yeah.
Um, we saw both those in the one game that they played this week. I'm not saying that BC was the superhuman team; they were the other. Um, and in this game, Winnipeg, this is a team that plays really well when they're angry. When they feel, that they're really ashamed of what. And I use that word accurately. I think this is a team that has a lot of pride. And when they play the kind of games they played this year, um, you know, uh, sometimes shame is a motivation. We sucked. We've got to, make it happen. We've got to, and this is a team that gets fired up, and they have such great leaders that, they have a real tight locker room. They can handle this kind of stuff, and this game proves it. I mean, this is the team, Winnipeg, that had a hard time with BC a few weeks back. Didn't look like they had a hard time this time.
No, and I wonder. I wonder if the game would have been different if it wasn't Dane Evans at quarterback too. Like
You
part of
could
me,
be right. You could be right.
you know.
But Caleros by himself. I don't
Oh
care who
yeah,
was. I don't care who was on the other side. No offense to the other quarterbacks, in BC. Caleros was on the money. My goodness, he was so accurate, and for distance too. I mean, all those game breaking plays in the first quarter. I mean, 21 points in the first quarter. I mean, what else can you say about an offense and a team, plugged and ready to go? They were ready to go. The receivers, oh my gosh, you know, the patterns that they ran, everything was just perfect. They really were focused, and they weren't going to be denied. No way. They were going to beat BC, and they were going to make sure they were beaten, and they did. They imposed their will on the BC Lions.
yeah, they did, and that's a game where that Winnipeg wanted to show that maybe it was a little bit of obviously a fluke, maybe what happened to them, right? Because when we looked at that
Sure,
game in of itself, we thought maybe that was just Winnipeg having an off day, an uncharacteristic.
absolutely. And that could be true too.
Yeah. So I wonder.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do wonder if that's a factor too that played into this. But I
they
also
had injuries too. The guys are coming back now. Their
yeah.
top
Well,
receiver.
look at Kenny Law. Yeah, look at Kenny Lawley. Sheesh. Yeah, he makes that offense scarier than it already is.
From the moment that he stepped back in the field last week, before this week, his first catch. I mean, we're talking some of the best receivers that we've seen in a very long time. We're not just talking the best receiver here this year. This guy's the real deal. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a game breaker. He makes catches where I don't know, they're magical. The only way to describe it is a magical receiver, and Winnipeg and every team that can say that they're contending for the Grey Cup have a lot of magic on the sideline that they can put out on the field. And Winnipeg has more than their share of great players. And Caleros at the top of the list, I was mesmerized by his quarterbacking skills. And of course, credit always, as it should be, to the offensive line. And also, we saw what makes a great, pitch and catch combination. You have receivers. You were talking about the Argos, how they didn't help Dukes. Well, not that the passes had to be salvaged by the receivers. They were quite good. Thank you very much. But they also didn't drop the ball. We've seen that time and time again with receivers who literally have the ball tossed to their hands into their chest and can't catch it. We saw in that game when we talked about the Argos not looking so good, we saw dependable receivers that are looking to make the play before they catch the ball. These are all mistakes that you can't hide from when the film comes out. And this game that Winnipeg played against BC, the film that they might as well just burn it and just repeat what they repeat, rinse and repeat, and do it again next week. But I'll tell you, BC has some film to look at.
No, they really do. That offense. I mean, we look back to when Dane Evans initially took over against Saskatchewan, and that was scraping and clawing for anything, right? And then I said that against Edmonton, you really have to be careful of what you deduce from that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like this was a true moment for BC to be like, we got some work to do here, because I don't even know how long Vernon Adams is out for. Like, it's a
He
knee.
was on the sidelines. They
Yeah.
were saying that he might have been able to come in.
Like that's what, in a game like that that's so out of hand, that'd be the worst thing you can do. So maybe it's a short term thing for BC, but you know you don't when you already have your quarterback banged up with an injury, you can't put yourself in a position where that's something that's going to be lingering for all
One.
season, right? You
This
don't
is
want
one time 100% is required.
to
At this time of the year, 100% healthy
as
is
close to
the is the
100% as
goal.
you're going to get. Like,
Is the goal.
to the point where you're not concerned if he goes back in, he's going to re-injure, or there's some thought in his mind that it's not going to go well for him.
If this was a game that had playoff implications or was a playoff game, a game that, we go home if we don't win, yeah, maybe he goes in. And I can understand him going in. But this introduces us to the conversation we had earlier with quarterbacks playing when they shouldn't be. And this is part B of that conversation. There are a lot of times quarterbacks shouldn't be asked to do certain things when the game is 40-10. There's a lot of times when the quarterback is being asked to do things or does things that risk good health. Not a good idea. And this is another one. This is another chapter and verse. Let's protect the quarterback. Don't bring him in if he's not 100% healthy. Can he play? Great. Does he want to play? Absolutely. But the coaching staff and basically the people who are in charge of the quarterback's health and safety should be the ones who make the final decision.
Absolutely. No, they have to. And again, you have to explain to Vern Adams that the goal is not to be good and ready. I know obviously you want to have him ready to go for playoff time, but you don't want to go around and say, we don't want you to be out for playoff time too. They need him open. They need him around for that time. And so if he has to sit even for an extra week or two, you have to do your best to sell that. And obviously you have to he's got to respect the coach's decision, because they're going to have his best interests at hand here. So
If they were slipping out of the playoffs, again, it's all about how important the games are. And it's a balance, right? How important the games are, how healthy he is. Again, at this time of year, I think health should be the priority. What I really liked about that game, um, uh, is the fact that BC still didn't look bad. They just were. This was more about how good Winnipeg was, not how bad BC was. I'm sorry. I'm not a BC fan. I'm not trying to say I'm a BC fan. I'm not a BC apologist, but that there was just no holding back what Winnipeg did. BC did not look that bad. They just didn't look effective, and that's important. And you highlighted the main reason why you don't score: the quarterback, the receivers, the running game, the offensive line. You know, defense putting offense in a good position to start, you know, first down, all those things impact on a good offense.
I think the big one for two is what mistakes did Winnipeg really make?
None. They did the opposite of make mistakes. They were over the top. I mean, you know, we joke sometimes. People say, well, we should be 110. We got to play 110% today. Well, you can't do that. It's 100%. That's as much as you, but you know what? That game makes me think of 110% was what Winnipeg, how well they played. They were playing about 110%. It was just they were over the top. It was amazing to watch. I love when that kind of stuff, when you have that kind of symbiosis between a quarterback, a receiver, and the running game and the defense, and that kind of perfection. When football teams do that, David, it's amazing. It's amazing to watch. And if you don't bother figuring out who the team is and just look at the game and what they're playing and forget the jersey, you can really enjoy some really great football. And that was some of the best football you're going to see this year by a team.
Yeah, I think so. We've seen some, like even the game against with BC against Winnipeg, like that was BC was on top of their game. Winnipeg didn't play clean at all, but that's what you saw right there. You saw, you know, we're seeing in these blowout games, like one team's really commanding everything, right? All three phases, and that's what makes it impressive, right? Winnipeg did it to BC. BC's done it to Winnipeg. Toronto's done it to BC
BC, yep.
to a degree.
Winnipeg is going to be playing Toronto soon. That's going to be interesting.
Like we're about to see. I mean, hopefully, injury aside, we're hopefully going to see the best of the best right now. It's the unfortunate part is there's not many other teams that are at that level. Some teams are getting there. Some teams are finding their way
There are teams that we kind of are less evidence based, more hopeful, like Montreal. We're all hopeful that Montreal is going to make that step, take that extra step from, a team that can make the playoffs to a team that can contend for first. They are in second place. They do have a 4-3 record. The Argos have a 6-1 record. That's only a differential of 2 losses. So, the Argos are not by any stretch guaranteed first place. Montreal gets on a roll and the Argos do the opposite. It can get tight at the top. And I think that's why, if we move to the next game, it's a good segue with Montreal and Hamilton, why Scott Milanovic right now will be doing the play calling for the Hamilton Tiger Cat offense.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the Hamilton Tiger Cats, like that's such a deflating loss because they were controlling the game for the first 2 quarters, right? It was looking like 11-3. Montreal wasn't really getting much going on offense. They're starting to claw back just a little bit, but Hamilton still got a bit of an edge. 18 points in the fourth quarter. Like just nothing. They had nothing left in that fourth quarter. And just that's a game that unfortunately cost Tommy Condell his job. I understand that they said it was a mutual agreement to part ways, but let's be honest here. This was in the works for a little bit when you see how that offense has been working all season long, and it felt like something was going to change at some point.
Well, Condell survived last season. Last season was a horrible season offensively for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And this was bound to happen. And this is the kind of stuff that does happen. And who didn't think this was a possibility the moment they heard Scott Milanovic was on the coaching staff, or a consultant at least? I mean, the writing was on the wall. Someone's going to get replaced, and now the question is, and I'm not trying to rattle any cages here, especially in Ticat land, but how far does Milanovic advance in importance with the Hamilton Tiger Cats? Do we have a head coach who becomes a vice president and that's it? Is that possible? I don't think change. This is it for Hamilton. Uh, you know, Milanovic is an experienced head coach. He's won a Grey Cup. He's finished first on top of that. He's run some pretty good offenses. His offenses are. He comes from the school of the Western offense, and anyway, he he's somebody that if you're a Hamilton fan, you're going, if things don't turn around.
I think the big one here is if I'm Orlando Steinauer, you tell Milanovic you're handling the offense because that's an area that needs the most focus. You worry about that. I'll take care of the defense. I think that's where it's going to work right now. Now, if things don't go well in Hamilton, we already know that this is going to be how's the best way to put it? This is going to be a situation where, yeah, jobs are going to be on the line for a lot of people, or mainly Orlando Steinhardt, because he's put himself in that position. We talked about last week. He is judge, jury, and I mean, in this case, someone else is going to be the executioner because he would technically have the final say in all personnel decisions.
Well, this is one of those situations where Orlando Steinauer can say, "Oh well, maybe I'll kick myself upstairs, and I'll spend some time as the vice president of the Hamilton Tiger Cats." It's not like he doesn't have a role if all of a sudden he isn't. Can he fire himself? Can he take a step back? What will it take for him to make that decision? How long does Milanovic have to improve the offense so that this team can be competitive and demand by their play a playoff spot? Because that's what they have to do. I mean, this is an organization that's very demanding. They've always had a lot of brain power, you know, in the organization. Milanovic, it was Barker last year, Milanovic this year. This isn't an organization that's shy in bringing in some real tall foreheads to the organization. And this is a team that is hungry for wins. This is a team that for the second time in the last couple of years are going to be the hosts of the Grey Cup. And all hands are in. They want to make it to the Grey Cup. They haven't given that up. They're not going to give that up. And there isn't a Hamilton Tiger Cat fan who doesn't feel the same way. So this is an important moment for Hamilton football.
It is. This is the point of the season where if they can't turn things around, like Ottawa, the only thing they have going for them right now, the West teams, the threat of the crossover is still not there yet, and
Either way, yeah.
and Ottawa is a team that's still like if this was a Jeremiah Mazzoli led Ottawa team, this would be a different story. I think Hamilton's season would be in real jeopardy, but they could still get in. I think right now the important thing is you got to take the Argos approach. We're 0-0. Yes, you have a bit of a mountain to climb, but you know the what doesn't help is that Toronto's I think taking this season series, and so is Montreal. So you can't hope to tie one of them. You have to hope that you can finish third and avoid the crossover potentially, or because I don't know if Montreal's going to fall off. Right, like that's the problem right now. Toronto's built up such a lead that yeah, first is not in the bag for them, but they're also in a position where, unless Hamilton goes on like a crazy, 13 to what I'm trying to do the math in my head right now. I think the best that they could finish right now is 13-5. So go on a 10. They have 10 more games left. I don't see them winning 10 out of 10 games, right? Like they got to find a way to be better than 500 in this final stretch here.
Let's keep in mind, and do a reset here and remember that the Montreal Alouettes are the only team playing with the number one quarterback in the East.
Yeah.
And that's a large scale advantage in a season. And the Argos, we've said it we've said it from day one here. We weren't only talking about Chad Kelly being the number one quarterback. We've questioned, I know I have, and I think I've heard you say it too, that what will this team look like without Chad Kelly? Well, we're finding out. What will the Ottawa Red Blacks look like without Jeremiah Mazzoli? What will the list? I could go on and on. I don't want to bore everybody, but the point is, you have a number one quarterback, your odds on winning are much higher than they are when you don't have a number one quarterback. If you have a 1A, that's great. Evans is a 1A, right? We agree that Evans is a guy who could be a number one. Problem is, he hasn't been a consistent number one. And we've got a guy in Montreal who is a number one quarterback and who's a very serviceable quarterback. And when there's no number one quarterbacks in the East, he looks even better.
Yeah.
And he looked great against Hamilton.
He did, right? Like, that's probably a good thing for Montreal is that they haven't had. No, they've kind of been teetering, right? They've kind of had good performances, not so great performances. They're a team that I think is still trying to feel things out, and you expect that. It's a whole new team, new quarterback, new head coach. I think the only thing that's really remained, I think only the defense has really kind of stayed somewhat the same. So I expected there to be some ups and downs in this season for Montreal. I think what they realize is they're picking up the important wins. You got to beat you have to beat Hamilton. Now Toronto, that's still potential there. Like, that was a really close game. The two of them played against each other. So if you're Montreal, you got to think we're going to try our best to make sure we don't lose these games to Toronto coming up, just to avoid that potential tie-breaking scenario. So I think with Montreal, they're gonna put the importance on these East games. And if you're Hamilton, you cannot lose to Ottawa. You cannot lose to Toronto again. I mean, they're not going to have many games left against Toronto because they've already played twice against them. So those are kind of, I think that's where the objective has to be a little bit. And I think what you're going to see the talk from Orlando and probably Milanovic is that we're going to take it a week at a time. And that Bo Levi Mitchell's not coming back anytime soon. I don't know what the diagnosis for Schultz was. I know he's on the 6th game, but I don't know if that's something that's going to keep him out for the rest of the season. I don't think it was. I'm just trying to look this up very quickly. I think he's on the 6th game, but they didn't say how long he was going to be on for. So, like, that's the situation. Like, right now, it is Powell. I don't think Antonio Pipkin's all of a sudden going to come in here and take over for Powell. They could be that way if they decide that Pipkin's a veteran. He knows the CFL game, so that's usually a little easier for some teams to bring in a veteran quarterback like that. But I just think that you're gonna have to hope that Milanovic has something new that he can rejig this offense that just looks very, very stagnant right now.
Well, the good news is that he's been around since the beginning of the season, so he knows, firsthand what the team's been doing offensively or what they haven't been doing, however you want to slice it. So yeah, he's not a guy who's just been helicoptered in. He's a guy who's been a part of the organization. So that should work out well for him. When we talked about Montreal, and we talked about, they're a team that we think can be more than just, a playoff team. They could be a contender. I think the same can be said for Ottawa, but they need a quarterback. And right now, Crum is he's okay. The good news with Crum is he's not losing the game for them. It doesn't throw an interception. That's really important. But they don't really churn up many yards. And the rushing game, Devontae Williams, 33 yards is not going to cut it for winning a football game. So they need to work that out. Crum's a rookie. He's had some great victories. Right now, the difference between the in the last 4 games, I'm gonna say is this: the last 3 minutes for Ottawa have been really good or not good enough.
Yeah. No, I think for him it's going to be I think for Ottawa, yeah, they have to find ways to get those game changing plays. They did it. They were doing it against Saskatchewan. There were some good moments there. I don't know if we want to talk about that game, but I feel like
Yeah.
going for. I remain adamant that in the CFL when you are on the 1 yard line, I understand that you try to get the points when they can, but when you're not guaranteed a win on a field goal, don't take a field goal on the 1 yard line when you're on the 1 yard line. I have seen teams be burned by this on countless occasions. I remember the Argos did the same thing against Hamilton in the 2021 East Final. They're on the 1 yard line. They couldn't punch in after the first 2 tries. 8 yard field goal. What that sends to the other team is you are giving us a chance to go out and win this game now instead of you know
It
trusting your
says
ability to
practice
pull it out.
isn't going well to me.
Yeah,
'Cause that's something that no, I'm not suggesting that, those kinds of plays, short yardage should be automatic. Wait a minute, I am gonna say that. Short yardage should be automatic. There shouldn't be a question about it. I
especially
if
when you
you
have a
can't work
mobile
that out.
quarterback like Crumb. Like you've shown in past weeks. I think the one against in one of the overtime games, they had a great play at the goal line. Like you have the ability to do it. And you get opportunities on the 1 yard line, you got to make the most of it. Like, come on. Like, this is
No, I'm with you, I'm with you.
like that. That
Conservative
to me,
football
that's a very frustrating way to lose a football game.
being conservative at the end of the first half is one thing,
Yeah.
being conservative is one thing, but not having the confidence to basically I mean, I guess I'm oversimplifying short yardage. I'm not calling it a slam dunk, but it's the next best thing. I mean, you have the ball, you have a system. They've got a guy who we know is elusive, so why not? Yeah, sometimes, we, from time to time, because the coach makes the decision and then the result that follows is negative. So that decision must have been bad. That's an automatic assumption on our part. But still, that's all we can do, right? All we can do is question the play that didn't work, and why didn't you do a play that might have worked? And again, it's might have worked. Now we don't know really what's going on there. Does Crum have the ability, or is he a little ticked? You know, he's been tinkered with a little bit because he has spent a lot of time running, and it's very risky doing what he does. And the physical ailments that players have in play sometimes can take away from their being 100%, and we don't realize that that's what's going on, and that could be part of it too with Crum. And let's also talk about how long it's been that he played this many games in a row, been on the field this long, been this impactful, been dependent on to the degree that he's been dependent on. He's getting into game shape basically in these last few weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's totally true. And those are things that you have to take advantage of in some ways. You have to find a way to turn things around in those situations for
Well, I
sure.
love his play. It's by the way, did you see the sheep running
Yeah.
on the field?
I sent someone a message saying I have seen a lot of animals run on the field in a football game. Squirrels, cats, dogs,
Rabbit. My
rabbits.
favorite's the rabbit that at the goal line did a
Um,
backflip.
I have never seen a sheep. I have
Where
never.
what was it doing there? I mean,
No idea.
oh, I know what. That might have been the Regina Ram sheep. That might have been the Regina Ram animal that got loose.
It must have been.
Eh? Yeah, because that's the nickname of their college team, Regina
Yeah.
Rams. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know the whole story about why there was a sheep on the field, but it was interesting. It was sheerly wonderful.
Yeah. No, and
Absolutely.
yeah, it was this game had everything. Let's just say.
Let's talk about the Canadian Football League, and I don't know if we talked about it last week. I don't think we did. The Canadian Football League was sending out the last couple of weeks. Have been sending out a signal that this could be the year for Nova Scotia and Halifax.
I this one continues to be a situation where the CFL, this should have been the number one focus for the CFL, to just try and get this thing to be as solid as possible. And I don't know, like I understand that the pandemic has had its ups and downs, but like this should have been, like, you've needed a 10th team for the longest time. And everyone's talking about how it's kind of worked with Touchdown Atlantic. And so, like, that should have always remained the focus for the CFL. Best way to make this work, and best way to, you know, make they've done a good job making it an event, but how can they draw more interest in it? That's always been my number one question.
What did you think of St. Mary's?
I thought the facilities were good. But I still don't think it's enough, because the amount of work would have to be done to make that into a CFL stadium. Actually, Three Down Nation did a good job of looking at proposed sites and which would be the best options for the CFL. And they've already got the best option available, which is to partner with the CPL team, and you make a stadium. You don't have to give it the 30 to 40,000 capacity, even if you do 25,000. And then with the ability to expand capacity, it
Temporary seating.
you have blueprints like in Ottawa, you know, Toronto, even Hamilton, that I think could work. You don't, like, these stadiums are not NFL site like stadiums. These aren't billion-dollar projects. And if you can get another team involved with it that can kind of help make it all work, I still think it's worthwhile. But, you know, I think I understand where Halifax's hesitancy is, that, well, you're going to build a stadium that's only going to be used X time of the year, and then it's shut down. Although
That's why the
Edmonton
soccer
finds
has
ways
to.
to use theirs in the wintertime. They do like some winter games there, and they set up a slope or something. It's really cool. Like, you got to be a little creative if you want to try to find a way to make this venture work. I think it like they're starving for more professional options out there in Halifax, in my opinion.
Absolutely. You know, I was there. I know that it has a history. I know that it has a football following. I know also that they really got a gut punch because of the pandemic. Now, unfortunately, that gut punch is the previous group of people that were going to bring the team. It just took the wind right out of their sails. Now, I don't know. I don't know who will stand up and say, "Hey, I'll own this team." That's the first thing they need, and there has to be somebody who's willing to take the risk of seeing how well the CFL can work in Halifax. There are no guarantees, and you know, somebody who ends up owning that team is going to be taking on a financial risk, and that's not easy, you know. And when the city, or the whatever, the city has sort of changed its tune a little bit on how supportive they're going to be for the football team, it doesn't exactly ingratiate itself with possible owners, right? So there's going to have to be something. There's been a compromise. The Canadian Football League has said temporary seating is not a turnoff for us anymore. We're okay with that.
Mhm.
I don't think your idea is something that is far from an agreeable idea, where almost a standard that needs to be applied, and that is that there has to be more than CFL as a tenant for the place. And yes, soccer's the best opportunity for them to at least have more events, at the venue. The venue needs to have stuff going on. It's the handicap that we have as football fans. We only have 10 games a year, at our local
Yeah.
stadium, right?
No, for
So
sure.
that's a tough situation.
Yeah, I think it's the toughest situation that the CFL has to figure out right now, because I think the number one of the biggest drawbacks I've heard people say to the CFL is like it's only 9 teams, right? Like it's the imbalance of the schedule, but also, get more cities involved. Find a way to make this, you know, this legal. I wouldn't say more. What's the word? Legitimate, legit. Like I think it's a legitimate league, but people say, well, it's only a 9-team league, right? How hard is it really? Like people outside of the CFL always tell me about that. Well, I mean, it's in Canada. How many cities can you really have? You know, really bring a professional football team to, right, with the infrastructure that's needed for it. So, I think that the CFL, like if the CFL were to get this 10th team in and it works out, it would be a big win for the league that's had not many wins the last few years.
Well, you never know. I mean, what's to stop them from ending up with 12 or 11 or whatever? There are some football hungry people in Quebec that a second team, many feel, could work out. But we can carry on further discussing that situation. We've run out of time this week. David, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 9 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, and download it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to join me or subscribe on YouTube, Candid Frank Stanisci 1030. See you next time.